And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the 2-Point Conversion NFL DFS podcast. This week, James and I will be previewing the Week 6 action, 15 games. We have a London game that's actually on the main slate for once. They figured that much of it out. It's going to be an interesting slate. We'll get to that in just a minute. But first, James, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Not bad. Beautiful Wednesday. Always look forward to chatting a little football with you on a Wednesday, a little DFS action. Before we get to the main slate, or the 15 games, there's been a hot topic on the World Wide Web, the Twitter sphere, about defenses. Why don't you give us your opinion, because you've been in the middle of some of those conversations.
Yeah, so Frisco Josh, if you haven't seen it, if you don't have a Twitter that is connected to any sort of DFS site, Frisco Josh brought forward this, I guess, hot take that defenses don't matter literally at all when you're projecting offensive players. And that thought kind of is jarring at first, to think that we've been projecting against defenses for all these years, and this dude comes out of the woodwork, and I mean, not out of the woodwork, like he's been around for a while, but he comes out and says that defenses don't matter at all when you're projecting. And it's got people shaken up. Like it's been 4 days straight of people just arguing back and forth. It does matter. It doesn't matter. It does matter. It doesn't matter. And I just want to say one thing, a couple things really quick. So one, people are mad at Frisco Josh for saying this. He's a really smart guy. He does really good work. He uses machine learning algorithms. Like, he's not an idiot, you know? And people are legitimately mad at the guy for bringing this forward. And I don't understand being mad at him, because if you disagree with him and say that defenses do matter a great deal, all he's doing for you is making the playing field dumber by saying that defenses don't matter. So being mad at him kind of seems silly in a vacuum. And two, if you're mad at him, I kind of feel like you aren't as sure in yourself as you probably should be, because being mad at somebody means being defensive, and I don't think that's really the right way to go about it. Two, defenses, in my opinion, my kind of thoughts on this is that defenses probably don't actually matter that much. And I've put a lot of thought into it, and I think that I agree with a couple of people that say that the extremes matter. So, like, when we look at Jacksonville last year, I know that's one that people bring up a lot. Jacksonville last year did have an effect. You could see it in the average yards per attempt. You could see it in the completion percentages. You could see it in the rates. That Jacksonville did have an effect. And we know that Kansas City right now is kind of inflating things. But at the same time, if you are going to be projecting forward on a defense, I think the things that matter are, one, offensive coordinator prowess, two, quarterback strength, and three, offensive line strength. I don't think the skill players literally have anything to do with it at all. I don't think that the defensive backs have anything to do with it at all. I don't think that the linebackers have anything to do with it at all. And I especially don't think that position versus position defense matters at all. Like, saying that a team is good against wide receiver 2, but bad against wide receiver 1 is silly, because that doesn't really tell me much about projecting forward. All it tells me is that last week or the last couple weeks, the wide receiver 1 has gone off while the wide receiver 2 has done nothing, or vice versa. A team good against wide receiver 2 or good against wide receiver 1 is bad against wide receiver 2. Well, if the wide receiver 1 has a bad game, obviously the wide receiver 2 is going to have more chances to have a good game. That might not have literally anything to do with the defense. That could just be wide receiver 1 not getting separation on like 4 different plays that he would have been targeted, and now it goes to the wide receiver 2. So, like, long story short here, we don't know enough about anything in the NFL to really draw conclusions and project players correctly based on defensive statistics. We just don't. We don't have the info that tells us who gets doubled. We don't have the info that tells us what coverage is used by each defensive coordinator throughout the game. We don't have the info that can tell us where defensive players are on the field at the time of catch. We just don't have the info. So it's kind of like, if you're projecting wide receiver 1 strengths per DVOA or by PFF or something like that, that's fine and dandy, but you got to understand that you're only projecting maybe 7 or 8% of the game, just like if you were trying to project against pitch types in baseball. That's something I said earlier. Yeah, you can say that Ryan Zimmerman is incredible against the slider, but he's only going to see like 6 hittable sliders in the game. So is that really a stat that matters? I don't think that it is. So if I think that maybe the top extremes matter, but I do think that we severely overproject defenses. And what really matters is how the players are used in the game plan and by the offensive coordinators way more than how strong a defense is. And that's what I think of that.
Okay. So when you're going into your matchups per se, how do you suggest like offense A is better in this matchup versus this defense?
So I usually look at average yards per attempt. That's one of my big ones, and ADOT, because both of those tell us a story about how the ball is going to be moving down the field. In GPPs, we don't want somebody who's only going to throw the ball 6 yards down the field. You know, you don't ever want to take Alex Smith because he just doesn't throw the ball deep down the field. You didn't want to take Sam Bradford. Like, he was never worth a shot in GPP, no matter the defense, because even if he were going up against the worst defense in the world, he's only throwing the ball 5 yards down the field. So the first thing I look at is average yards per attempt and ADOT, so that I know that those targets are going to be meaningful when they're used. And then you kind of have to look at how the running back is used. Like, we've had the conversation about the running back. Running backs don't so much matter. You just take the cheapest one with the biggest volume. But when it comes down to wide receivers and quarterbacks, I think that you really just focus on how far down the field the ball is being thrown. I use NFL stats. I use their next-gen stats to calculate what the expected completion percentage is going to be, and that's how I project my quarterbacks forward, and then everything waterfalls after that. So after I do the quarterback projections, then you can look at that and look at what wide receivers are going to be getting those targets down the field, and then you can go from there. But it all starts with how far the ball is being thrown down the field, as far as I'm concerned. And so with that, like, the other way that you think about that is when you think about an offense versus a defense, the defense has to react to the ball being thrown a certain way. It's way easier for a defense to react to a ball being thrown 6 yards down the field rather than 11 or 12. So that's where I start. I always start at that shows what the offensive coordinator is after per game.
Okay. Yeah, I like that a lot, actually. I was actually, before we started recording, I was all over the airyards.com checking out the recent receivers, ADOTs, and air yards. And I know you're referring to the quarterback side of things, but it all correlates one way or another if the receivers, going down the field and everything. And yeah, I definitely see where you're going there. That's why, just top of my head, haven't seen any of your data work, but we do talk off the internet from time to time. And I'm just guessing that Jared Goff has to have a pretty good completion percentage and everything, because he's got 3 receivers that just, torch the field, and they all have 20% target shares. Now the ADOT's not huge in all of them, even though I think Robert Woods Brandon Cooks was pretty good at one point in time. But as a whole, if you're talking about kind of weapons like that and moving the ball down the field, that's got to be looking pretty good. I'm just assuming.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things. Like, his average yards per attempt is 10.4, which is second highest in the league, only behind, I think, Ben Roethlisberger at 10.5.
That's not bad.
And then if you look at Ryan Fitzpatrick was at 10.5. Those are the kinds of things. Like, Patrick Mahomes is over 10. And then the expected completion percentage, like, yeah, Jared Goff has been over his head. Like, he's 4.3 percentage points over his expected completion percentage, but he's still got a 68% expected completion percentage. So it's not like that's going to go down all that far. It's not a situation where, like, I don't know. I was talking about Josh Rosen and Josh Allen the other day. Yeah, they both have quite a bit of work up towards their expected completion percentage. They're both about 8 percentage points below. But Josh Allen has an expected completion percentage of about 64 or 62%. And Josh Rosen, his is at 57%. He's completing less than 50% of his passes right now. So even if he does have positive regression, like, he still sucks. And so that's not a situation that you want to put yourself in. Even if Christian Kirk is a burner, even if you think that David Johnson is going to be better, like, you don't want to take somebody like Josh Rosen who's not throwing the ball down the field and not completing a lot of passes. It's not a smart thing to do in GPPs, especially if you're going to be playing the numbers game.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And it'll be curious to see how that continues to go along with as you develop the stats more. Your your models more and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, the expected completion percentage stuff, you can find that over at NFL Next Gen Stats. They have a whole bunch of cool stuff. They introduced machine learning, and that pushes back to 2016. And that stuff is really, really going to change the game, I think. As far as projecting quarterbacks, it's really sharp, and I've been using it, and it's been good. I mean, I got a lot of flack for Bortles being my number one quarterback last week, but I mean, he put up 28 fantasy points, so hit my projection.
Garbage time production, baby. Woo!
Don't matter, dude. It counts.
Oh, I know. Hey, I'm not knocking it at all. I trust me. I had a lot of people like texting me and stuff, not even from the podcast, just people I know, and sitting there going, "What the hell's going on?" The first half, he's just a mess. I'm like, there's a reason you liked Bortles. It's called game script. You expected him to have to play from behind. This works. But we're going to find a few of those spots this week, and you guys came to listen for DFS advice, so we will go on rants like that from time to time because I think it does help the overall process of what you need to do from week to week. But let's get into the DraftKings action, James. Let's kick it off with Thursday night special. Philadelphia at the New York Giants. Giants 3-point home dogs, total around 45 in this one. Looks like Evan Ingram is out already. Clement will be playing for Philadelphia. Ajayi's out for the year. What are you liking in this one, James?
Yeah, I think people might get a little cute on this one and try to take a cheap running back on Philadelphia. I'm going to wait a week. I don't trust any of those situations yet. I know that people like Corey Clement because he was getting the bulk of the work, but Wendell Smallwood has been the better running back in limited time. I'm just going to wait. I don't know what they're going to do. We know that Doug Peterson likes to use an RBBC, so I don't think there's much value there. I do think that there's probably a little bit of value on Carson Wentz because he's been bad to start the year. But the only player that you really want from this game is Saquon Barkley. He's just been out of his mind. He has great metrics. He's got great market share metrics. I think he has he's averaging 18 carries per game and well over 10 targets per game. So he's benefiting a lot from Eli Manning being absolutely god-awful this year, and Odell Beckham is not. So the only player that I really want from this game is Saquon Barkley, and I don't mind the Philadelphia Eagles defense if you want to go there.
Yeah, no, it's not pretty for the overall section of it. Yes, Barkley at 7,400 is really, really good, and he's going to keep getting the workload like you mentioned, even when it comes to the passing game. He's got 39 targets on the year, which is fourth best at running backs. So there's a lot to like there in that respect. It is a very sketchy game. You're kind of grasping at straws. I don't like a ton about it. I think it has the potential to be a sloppy Thursday night game that we're used to seeing. Last few weeks have been pretty good. This feels like it could kind of be one of those what the heck just happened games. With Ingram out, Shepard has seen over 20% of the workload the last 3 weeks, and he scored touchdowns in 2 of those 3. So something to think about there if you need to go that direction. Since this is a showdown slate, and we all like to play showdown, James, we have to give a little more than just a couple. I agree with everything you said. If you're playing the full 15-gamer, you could probably just cancel this game out unless you want Saquon or Zach Ertz because tight end is a disaster, and Ertz is getting over 30% of the target share at the tight end position, which is absolutely insane. So I can respect a $6,800 Ertz. I really can. Just go cheap somewhere else. Just treat him like a high-end wide receiver. That's what he is right now. So those two things I get. If we're looking at the showdown slate, how are you approaching that? Because you are going to have to get cute in a few areas. I think Saquon is a must play for me. We always talk about multiple quarterbacks, but then again, we are talking about Eli here. What are you looking at when it comes to the showdown?
Yeah, so my two rules generally are clashing here. One rule that I have is always play both quarterbacks in showdown, and one rule that I have is to never, ever play Eli Manning, ever. So this slate kind of breaks me a little bit, but I'm going to play both quarterbacks. Eli Manning is too cheap, especially for a quarterback. He's still the second highest projected player for me on this slate behind Carson Wentz and slightly ahead of Saquon Barkley. I think that the way that you do this is you play Carson Wentz and Eli Manning, and then you play Nelson Aguilar, who has still gotten plenty of the work over the last couple weeks, even though people have completely forgotten about him and stopped talking about him. The idea was that he was going to go away when Jordan Matthews came back, but he's too good for the team to just put away. And Jordan Matthews isn't that good. We know that he's not. So Nelson Aguilar has still been getting plenty of the work. His target share really hasn't dropped. In fact, it's gone up a little bit since being moved outside. He would probably be one of my bigger exposures in showdown, even though I haven't started building yet. And then like the other way that I kind of do this is I think you really just have to spread things out. Like taking a stand on a player, whether it be Odell Beckham or Saquon Barkley, I think is wrong to do on showdown slates. I think you need to, if you only have one lineup, yeah, you're playing Saquon Barkley. But if you're building multiple like me, yeah, you have to like kind of cut it down and you have to just spread it out and get a little bit uncomfortable and absolutely take advantage of the kickers. People forget that the kickers exist. And I love the kickers so much. Like, they're free points every single time that a team gets within like 35 yards to the end zone. So remember to play the kickers. They're a great source of salary relief. They almost always pay off. Play the kickers.
Yeah, I get laughed at almost weekly, or I'd say 2 out of the 3 showdown slates a week I get laughed at in our Sports Degen Slack chat because I literally say, play this kicker. And they go, why? I've played kickers in the captain spots for fun, and I've still cashed. You're not going to probably win a tournament there, but I've cashed. I had, like, it was Justin – it was Matt Bryant when he had 250-yarders and stuff.
A couple weeks ago, I took second place in the $33 because I had a kicker in my captain spot.
Like you said, it's free points, and if you know it's going to be a tight game, like this last – sorry to cut you off, but this last Sunday night, the Houston Dallas game, I saw so many screenshots where the lineups had both kickers in there.
Yeah, and you needed both of them to take down the GPP. Like, dude, they're good plays.
Yeah, that's the thing with these games. Like, if it's going to be a shootout, sure, you don't want a bunch of extra points. But also, if it's going to be a shootout and things stall out, that's a lot of field goals. Like, you got to think of both scenarios. You got to be different. That's the biggest thing I try to tell people over and over again is you got to be different in these slates because everybody's going to want to play Saquon. Everyone's going to play Ertz. Everyone wants OBJ. They all make sense. But to be different, 2 kickers instead of 1, or play a kicker and the defense, or play – like, there's so many scenarios you can play out here.
Yeah.
And it makes a ton of sense. Like, you're not always going to get – like the Saints game where you have freaking Traquan Smith for $1,600. You're going to have Cam Meredith for $3K, and you're going to have Harris from Washington for $200. You're not going to have value like that to just sit there and stares you in the face. But, yeah, I love it. I think it's a great point you made there with the kickers, especially in a matchup like this. You know, it should be it's not going to be cold, still nice part of the year. But, you know, in the Northeast on a Thursday night, it's going to be a little colder than normal. There's a lot to like here. Defensive battle should ensue. I think it's very interesting. And I agree with your OBJ stance. He's been super productive. When you look at, like I said, I got bored on air yards today, so I took some notes, and he's got 58 targets. He's tied for 3rd in the NFL in targets at wide receiver. He's 4th in receptions at wide receiver. He's 5th in air yards at wide receiver, and he is number 1 in percent target share in the passing game at wide receiver at 31%. So at the wide receiver position. So there's a lot to love with OBJ, like you said. So I think everyone will go Saquon more so. I want to try to find a way to do both. Maybe that is using kickers. I think if you get both those guys in there, because everyone's going to want that Eagle side of things, it could be really interesting. I haven't really broke down the pricing that much, but I think it could be very interesting.
Yeah, and I still need to like look at things on my optimizer. I last week I was terrified because I wasn't getting any Zeke on Monday, but the way that it runs, I don't usually get the high-priced players. So I'm going to have to prioritize a little bit of Barkley and a little bit of Beckham. But I do think that, like, if you were playing cash, I think the way you do it is Carson Wentz, Eli Manning, Saquon Barkley, and then both kickers, and then somebody. Like, just do it that way. And that's, like, guaranteed at least close.
Yeah, no, that unless someone gets hurt, that is a recipe for definite close in the cash right out the gate. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And we'll move on with this. We don't talk about it all night, but go make sure, like, for some reason, if you listen here, you're not following James. I have no idea, but he tweets a lot of good stuff about what his optimizer says on the showdowns, the guys he wants captaincies, and I'd say most of the time it's pretty damn accurate. So I highly recommend following that because I'll set my lineups and reserve my spots and everything in tournaments, and I always check James stuff to see what he's got popping up there. So definitely go check that out. All right, let's get to the Sunday action. We have a total of 57.5, James. Tampa Bay at Atlanta. Atlanta 3.5-point favorites. You know, Jameis is back. You know, Tampa Bay off their bye week. One thing I will say before we break this down is O.J. Howard is supposed to be out 2 to 4 weeks, and everyone's drooling over Cameron Brate. As of Wednesday, O.J. Howard practiced. Not fully, but he practiced. So keep that in the back of your mind when you're breaking it down. But why don't you take us away on this one, Tampa Bay at Atlanta?
This isn't really a spot for me to want to fade, I don't think. Like, the players aren't overpriced. Jameis Winston is only 5,800, and we know that the offense that he's in now, like their offensive coordinator does not care about just airing it out. Like that wasn't all Ryan Fitzpatrick, and I hope that people think that it was all Ryan Fitzpatrick, but those plays were designed to be that far down the field. And if Winston is going to be airing out like that, he can have just as high of a ceiling as Ryan Fitzpatrick could, and maybe even higher because he's probably a better quarterback than Ryan Fitzpatrick is. But then you look at the wide receivers, Julio Jones is only 7,900. Mike Evans is only 8,100. Deshaun Jackson, 5,900. Chris Godwin, 4,400. Like, these prices are way too cheap. And then, like, Mohamed Sanu didn't even get a price bump. He's still only 4,800. Like, they did not price this game up at all. At all. And that's really, really dumb. I hear you on the O.J. Howard thing. I'm still waiting. In fact, I haven't made any changes in my projections so far to anyone because there's so many questionables this week, and I just don't really know where I want to go. But the O.J. Howard one is big because without him there, it's all great, you know? But if he comes back, then they have that split. Austin Hooper is probably going to be popular this week. I don't think I'm going to go there. I'm probably going to go back to the RSJ situation, which we'll talk about later. But, yeah, the pieces in this game are just too cheap. I don't know how you avoid any of them, honestly.
Yeah, this is one of those. It sucks because there's not a ton of high totals like there were last week. So people are going to gravitate to this game in a big, big way. So the best way I can say is differentiate your lineup elsewhere. It's the best advice I can give you because it's a tough one to miss. You know, you mentioned Winston at $5,800 coming up against a Falcons team that's just getting destroyed in the passing game. The last 4 weeks, QB7, QB1, QB9, and QB5. First, the Falcons defense. It is abysmal. Same token, Matt Ryan is in a phenomenal spot. He's averaging over 20 points a game in 6 games against the last 6 games against the Tampa Bay Bucks. That is pretty darn outstanding, and they've been struggling as well on the defensive side of things. I do agree. Evans at 81. I think Djax at 59 is a nice way to save some cash in this game with some GPP upsides, stretch the field out. He's gone over 100 yards in 3 of his first 4 games this season, so it's definitely something you can look at there. Again, Fitzmagic was there, but like you said, it's the philosophy of the offense, not as much the quarterback play here. And people forget that Jameis Winston was a top-end quarterback at the end of last season, and he had a phenomenal preseason. Like, the guy is good. You might not like his attitude, but he's a really good quarterback in situations like this. Chris Godwin is a guy we liked a lot, definite GPP value at 44. I echo the Brate sentiment. If Howard is out, Winston targets Brate almost 15% of the time last year, so there's a ton to like there. Atlanta side, we mentioned Matt Ryan. Julio, I know you echo it with me. Don't worry about the touchdowns. The guy is still putting up so many freaking points. It's ridiculous. He's top 5 or top 10 at least in almost every important wide receiver statistical category. He's an absolute monster. He's number 3 in air yards at the position with 831 air yards, only behind John Brown and DeAndre Hopkins. So he's damn outstanding, and he's got 29% of the target share. So don't worry about Julio at that price. It's too cheap. Sanu at 48 is a lock play in cash and GPPs. You have to play him at that price point. So, yes, I echoed everything you said. Probably didn't need to, but I think it's a phenomenal setup and a must lock and load. It's going to be hard to get away from that one and try to be different. It's going to be a pretty much must play there.
Yeah,
and we have we have listener questions. We have listener questions on this game, but we'll get to all those at the end. Okay, what were you going to say?
So I got to say, I'm so tired of people talking about Julio Jones touchdowns. I'm so tired of it. Like, it doesn't matter. He's still a wide receiver 1. You drafted him as a wide receiver 1. He's still acting like a wide receiver 1. The touchdowns don't matter. He's not touchdown dependent. Stop talking about it.
All right. We'll stop talking about it. We'll go Carolina at Washington. Washington's about a point favorite. Totals around 45 in this matchup. It's a pretty interesting game here. Carolina, coming off the bye week last week, kind of laid a dud on us. Not what we kind of expected, but still got some production. McCaffrey found the end zone. I think he's back in play again at $8,300. He's pricey. People might not like him, but he's been a running back 1 in each of his past 2 games, and definitely in play again. With as long as he keeps getting the passes, he's good to go. Cam is intriguing at 61. I think there's other quarterback options I like in this one, but Cam is not bad in this one. Could be a nice bounce back spot there. Be careful. Greg Olsen is practicing. If he comes back, we know that kind of shifts the offense a bit. Let's keep an eye on that one. Washington side of things, not really much I like. I like the Carolina defense quite a bit. I think they're very much in play. Washington has a ton of injuries they got to pay attention to. I'm not locked into much at all right now, so it's pretty much, run CMC, maybe some Newton in that Carolina defense for now, but not a ton in this game I'm looking at. What about you, James?
Yeah, I was going to say the defense at 2,600 is pretty hot, man. Like, Washington is bad, and Alex Smith is bad, and all of their good weapons are hurt. Like, Chris Thompson is hurt, Adrian Peterson is hurt, Vernon Davis is hurt, Paul Richardson is hurt, Josh Doxson is hurt, Jameson Crowder is hurt. Like, everyone is hurt for Washington. So I think 2,600, that's a steal on defense. That being said, all those injuries, it's really hard for me to project forward on this game. I agree that Christian McCaffrey at 8,300 is perfectly fine in play. If one of Chris Thompson or Adrian Peterson misses, Capri Bibbs at 3K is a hilariously good play. At wide receiver, Devin Funchess is still probably fine at 4,900. He let us down last week. I do think that DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel are going to come through and be good. Curtis Samuel is a much better wide receiver than Devin Funchess is at his core. He got 4 targets last week and a 25-yarder for a touchdown. That's not bad at all. But I think that we kind of have to wait and see how this game kind of turns out. I want to see the depth charts on it before we can really guess. But the defense looks good right now, and Christian McCaffrey looks good. And as always, you can play Cam Newton at 6,100 because his rushing ability is so high that his floor is really, really good. So I'm still fine with Cam, but I don't really like skill players.
No, I agree with you there. I think it's very much in play there, those two main aspects. But the defense, $2,600 may be the play for us this week. Let's go over to London. Seattle, Raiders. Raiders are 3-point dogs in this matchup. Totals at almost 48. So there's going to be some – offense has been good in London after the rough few games we started the London trips with. Been really good. What do you like in this matchup?
Derek Carr is still too cheap at 5,100. Like, I know that he was bad last week, but he's still way too cheap at 5,100. He's going to have way better games than that. And I have him projected for 226 passing yards, and that's more than most of the quarterbacks on the slate by a pretty good amount. So I might go back to Derek Carr. It kind of depends. I'm still hurting a little bit from last week, but it is what it is. Jordan Nelson is kind of catching up to Amari Cooper in air yards and market share. So he might pass him as wide receiver 1 here pretty soon. It kind of depends on how Amari Cooper looks in this game, I think. But be on the lookout for that. All of these players on Oakland are way too cheap. Amari Cooper, 5,200. Jordy Nelson, 4,900. Marshawn Lynch, only 5,300. He's been a really, really good running back all year. So long as they are, like, at least in the game, he's getting touches. And that matters. So on the Oakland side, I honestly think you can play pretty much anyone. Even Jared Cook at 5K is plenty in play here. On the other side, Russell Wilson had a good game for the first time this year, last week, but he's still not running the ball. And he still doesn't have actual good wide receivers. And what the fuck, Doug Baldwin last week?
He got screwed so hard. So hard.
Dude, I was like, we were going into those last games, and I was like behind the 8 ball. I was like, okay, I've still got David Johnson, and I've still got Doug Baldwin, and I've still got RSJ, and things are going to be okay. And then David Johnson ends up 30% owned. Doug Baldwin lays a goose egg, and RSJ misses all 6 of his targets. Like, the variance last week was gross. Gross. But anyway,
at least it all happened at once, hopefully.
Dude, hopefully.
It was bad. I'm with you. First set of games, I thought we had a chance at a great time, and it all just went away.
I was tilted. The Seattle, I don't know how to project Seattle at this point. Like, you think that Doug Baldwin comes back and he has like just this huge market share of the air yards in his first game back, and then literally nothing on the next game. So I don't know how to project them forward. I don't think that I want any part of this game, but I do think that Oakland is too cheap.
Yeah, Oakland is cheap. I do like Lynch at 53. I think he has a big bounce back week in London. And Jordy Nelson at 49 I like quite a bit. Everyone's talking the Amari Cooper even week narrative. If you believe in garbage like that, knock yourself out. But hey, maybe there's something to it. But Jordy Nelson at 49 I do like quite a bit at that price point. I pivoted to him a lot last week in that matchup. Got a garbage touchdown, which I'll take on a horrible week. Seattle side of things, Russell Wilson intrigues me if the ownership's right, just because I think this game is kind of a back and forth. Both teams score in the high 20s, low 30s type thing. So I think Russell Wilson will have some appeal. which would obviously mean David Carr would have some appeal, like you said, at 5,100. So I think both these I think this is a sneaky shootout game. I really do. It could be a place to find some nice pivots as such. Baldwin at 53 was definitely tilting, but Lockett at 51 I like quite a bit. He's been a massive target. He's been a massive air yard target for Russell Wilson in kind of a low-octane offense at the moment. But he's received almost 24% of the targets in the 2 games since Baldwin's been back. Lockett's still getting a lot of love in these matchups, even with Baldwin on the field. So Lockett at 51 I do like. Nick Vanette's the Lone Ranger at the tight end now. So $2,900 if you want a cheap tight end. There's other ones we will talk about later, but he is in the mix if you're stacking, I would say. And then Chris Carson at 44 is a cheap running back I like. Both running backs have been getting a lot of love. This is the way they're going to do things with a bad O-line without trying to kill Russell Wilson. So I think Chris Carson is very, very interesting. In his last 2 games, he's posted 124 and 127 yards from scrimmage on 34 touches the first time, but only 20 touches last week. And the Raiders are giving up the 29th most rushing points per game, averaging 17 points a game to the running back position this season. So I like Chris Carson at $4,400 as a nice piece in this game. But I think it's got sneaky upside, Seattle, Oakland, and I wouldn't go completely away from Seattle in my opinion. Let's go to New York. Colts at Jets. Jets 2.5-point home favorites. Total is 45.5. Take us away, James.
Yeah, Quincy Nunwa had a bad game last week. He was guarded by Chris Harris Jr. the majority of the game, and I mean that's going to happen, man. Like they have a good slot corner, but that's all that they have that's good. After Robbie Anderson burned them for 2 touchdowns, Terrell Pryor burned them for a touchdown, Isaiah Crowell set a new Jets rushing record. The Broncos suck. That's kind of like the basic idea here, but I think that you can probably go back to Robbie Anderson. He's been good most of the year, even if he's kind of a boomer bust play. He's like mini Tyreek, basically. And then if you want a little bit better of the floor, you can go to Quincy Enunwa, who is still the wide receiver 1 in this offense and still has a good rapport with Sam Darnold. I don't mind either one of those options in this game. They're both cheap enough to be in consideration. On the Indiana side, Andrew Luck is just throwing his arm off, just pass attempts, and we love that, especially because his ADOT is getting better and his average yards per attempt are getting better. So I like that. Eric Ebron is egregiously expensive at $5,400. Is he worth it? I don't think so. I think that people are going to pay for him this week just because he went off on national television, and that's always a really big raise to somebody's ownership the next week that they're on. And at 5,400, I'm not going to count for another 15 targets. Like there was a lot of game script happening last week where they just had to come out throwing constantly in the second half, and I don't think that's going to happen again. Chester Rogers is cheap at 4,500 with 11 targets last week. Ryan Grant had 9 at 4,600. But I think that you're kind of pushing these guys back down to their averages. At 6 targets maybe for both of them, I can see that. And then probably like 8, maybe 9 for Eric Ebron. I just don't see them having near as much production this week. And then there's Nyheim Hines, who crushed last week. And that was awesome. We love the kid. He's in good position again if you think the Jets are going to score some more. But I don't know how this game is going to go. Indianapolis could easily win this one. Or the Jets could easily win it, or it could be a defensive battle. So I don't think that you really need to go anywhere in this game. If you're in GPPs, you can take some shots on Robbie Anderson because he's the deep ball threat. But I don't think that I really want anything in this game because I think that it was inflated from last week.
Yeah, one way to do this is just avoid the game completely, as you said. Otherwise, look for value here. Robbie Anderson, GPP relevant, like you said, at $4,600. You can throw the deep ball and take those tarts. 3 catches, 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards. That's GPP games. He's going to have a bunch of duds, but I think they're going to start continuing to use Darnold's arm at least once or twice a game to see where they can go with it. And you might get Robbie Anderson some more. And also, just keep an eye on Quincy Enunwa. Besides the amazing defender he had to face last week, they didn't tell us anything in pregame warm-ups or nothing. We found out mid-game he had a cast on his hand. That's why the 2 passes that went to him in the first half dinked off his hand. He never had a pass again to him in the second half. They forgot to tell us this on the reports. So that was very, very convenient. And he's still kind of banged up, but it's supposed to be better, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. But if he's still in that kind of condition, then it's going to be tough to get him the damn ball, and Robbie Anderson does look a lot better. On the Colts side of things, I think Nyheim Hines at $5,100 is in a really good spot for the fact they used him a lot more in the running game last week than they had in a long time, and I think that's a great sign of things to come. Sure, it's the NFL, and this week he might not get any carries. We don't know. But the Jets are giving up almost 7 receptions to the backfield in football this season, so Hines will get his in the backfield at least, and hopefully in the running game as well. So I think Hines is a pretty good play. Maybe a better cash game than GPP. Maybe doesn't have that big 20-point upside unless he finds the end zone a couple times, but he probably has a good double-digit upside at $5,100 to get you some nice cash game, like 2x value, at least, hopefully 3x, someone to look at there. And then in the receiving game, Ebron at 54, I don't hate it as much as you do. I think he's very good just because the tight end position is so damn disgusting. I'm starting to get to the point where I'd rather gamble elsewhere. It seems like the only time I cash now is if it's Ertz or Kelsey or someone having their game in my tight end position. But that, and then, you got Chester Rogers, you have Ryan Grant because T.Y. Hilton is out. So if you need a cheap receiver, Ryan Grant's got a little more stability and always lower owned. The Chester Rogers is the fancy new name. So if you want to be a little different, Ryan Grant is very much in play for you there. All right. Arizona at Minnesota. This should be a good one. Last time we talked about Minnesota being a massive home favorite. Didn't work out too well for these guys. They're 10-point home favorites. Total is only 43. So you can kind of do the math on how that one's going to work out. But maybe it's like last week all over again. David Johnson at $5,900 is in play for me again. He was 6,300 last week. He's got 25 and 20 touches in his last 2 games. So definitely someone you can keep targeting. They still run stupid-ass plays with them. Watching a lot of that game was still frustrating because it's up the gut. Then they run one outside, and boom, he'd run off like 8+ yards. It was just like, wow, look how easy that is. So he's still in play for me at $5,900. Christian Kirk is a GPP play at $4,200. He's built a really good rapport with Josh Rosen. I don't know, Rosen's not great. James talked about his potential completion percentage and all that good stuff. He's there as a cheap option if you need to go there. RSJ, I'll let you talk about him. When you go to the Minnesota side of things, I think Kirk Cousins at 67 is going to be a super low-owned big boy play. I think losing that game to Buffalo earlier this year at home as big favorites, Arizona, they have a great defense, a sneaky defense for GPPs this week. Arizona does. They are only $2,000 if you want to get really sneaky because they have one of the top defenses in football. But if you think Minnesota's great offensive attack goes nuts, which is very possible, Kirk Cousins at 67 I think is huge with Thielen and Diggs. Thielen is a monster. He's leading our top 5 in almost all wide receiver categories. Just outstanding stuff with him. Targets, target share, so on and so forth. He's got it all. So I think that part of the receiving core is outstanding. It's pricey, but it'll go super overlooked in this matchup. So I think people are going to say game flow this, game flow that. Could be. But Cousins and Thielen, I think, are in for a huge game. Diggs is the GPP guy. Then you got a little bit of fun on Arizona if you want to. Minnesota defense is in play, of course, because Rosen will turn it over a few times. But, again, if you want to get ballsy here, total is only 43. Arizona's defense is $2,000. James, what do you like here?
Yeah, you hit on most of them. A Minnesota stack is firmly in play. Kirk Cousins is very, very good. Adam Thielen is very, very good. Diggs is very, very good. And then you mentioned RSJ. So RSJ was like my main tight end last week by a lot because he's cheap. He's really, really cheap, and he's getting good targets, and he's getting good air yards. And speaking of the targets in the air yard, he was tied for the lead in targets on the team with 6. He did lead the team in air yards, even with Christian Kirk having that deep bomb for a touchdown, and came up with 0 catches. That is wild. And it just screams positive regression for me. Like, I know that Rosen is bad, and my numbers say that Rosen is bad, and that's okay, man. Because at $2,700, like, I'm going to go back to Ricky Seals-Jones. Because when I saw it, like, as I was watching, because I didn't watch that game last week because I think Arizona sucks and I don't like watching bad football. But, like, as I'm watching my lineups not gain points because of RSJ, I just thought that he wasn't getting any targets and that, like, everybody hates him now. But no, he got 6 targets. He led the team in air yards. Like, I'm going back to that. And I think a lot of people got burned, and I'm going back to it at really low ownership at $2,700. I think that's fantastic play in GPPs especially. But then, yeah, Christian Kirk, he's a GPP play. I agree with everything that you said. And David Johnson at $5,900 is another great value. I'll probably have plenty of him again this week. They're using him a little bit better. They're giving him at least consistent rushes. Even if they need to be using him in the passing game, they're giving him consistent opportunities, and that's a step in the right direction at the very least.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. Eventually, we've been hoping for that. Maybe now they'll start passing him the ball a little more. It'll hopefully come because the talent is ridiculous for $5,900. Like, stupid crazy. And I agree with the RSJ stuff. I literally had to temper my anger in our Slack chat the other day. I know I keep bringing it up, but during that game, this one guy kept going, RSJ's doing nothing. I'm like, do you know what's going on in the game? No. He's got 6 targets. Like, I don't know what else you want me to do. He's getting the looks. Nothing's happening. I can't control that. It was tilting. Very, very tilting. But all right. You good on this game?
Yeah. But let's move on.
All right. Steelers at Bengals. Bengals 2.5-point favorites. They've been damn good. Beat my Dolphins last week because the Dolphins suck. And the total is 53, second highest total on the slate. Another nice game to come target here. AFC North battle. James, what do you got?
Yeah. So Juju Smith-Schuster is now being considered the wide receiver 1 by a lot of people in the Pittsburgh offense because they're dumb. It's still Antonio Brown. It's absolutely still Antonio Brown. Please don't believe anybody that says that it's Juju Smith-Schuster. He's a very good wide receiver 2. We've seen teams where 2 wide receivers can both be up there in like the finishing, be a top 20 wide receiver at the end of the year. We've seen it. We've seen it with Minnesota. We've seen it with Denver. We've seen it with a couple different teams. It can happen. Let it happen. But don't be saying that Juju is number 1. That's not smart. I like this game probably as a prime pivot off of Atlanta and Tampa Bay. Ben Roethlisberger has been out of his mind. Andy Dalton has been really good. I have him projected plenty fine this week, and at 6,300, he's still pretty good value. And then the wide receiver options for Cincinnati are pretty good value. Tyler Boyd is still only 6K. AJ Green is 8K, which I think is a pretty good price for him. I might like to see it a little bit lower, but those are pretty much the only 2 guys on this team, other than like CJ Uzomah and I guess Tyler Kroft got 1 target, but those are really the only 2 guys in this passing attack. Joe Mixon threw me a curveball and ran the ball 22 fucking times last week, coming 3 weeks.
He threw everybody a curveball because Marvin Lewis is an asshole.
I was so mad, dude. Like, I was so ready. I was so ready after reading some medical reports from, like, the guys who cover this kind of thing for the NFL. I was so ready to go there and have him at low ownership. And then Marvin Lewis is like, oh, we're going to ease him in. And me, who was worried about Joe Mixon at the start, was like, okay, cool. That confirms me not wanting to play him. That's cool. And then I didn't play him, and now I hate everything. So there we go. That's fine. I like the Cincinnati side. I like the Pittsburgh side. James Conner is still too cheap. I don't think people will go back to him because there's other options that they might like more this week. But yeah, I like everything in this game. I don't really have anything other to say than that. Stack it up however you want. The offenses are super concentrated, so it's hard to go wrong.
Yeah, I definitely agree. This is a phenomenal game to pivot off the Atlanta game with. You already said it's going to be hard not to play the Atlanta game, but this is a great pivot. And for those doubting Antonio Brown, last week he had 13 targets to Juju's 4. He had 126 air yards to his 31. He had 45% of the target share to Juju's 14. So I think, like you said, James, people can put the kibosh on that one. And if you want to just look at the season as a whole real quick, Antonio still has 12 more targets than Juju. He has over 330 more air yards than Juju. He has 5% more of the target share, 30% to 25%. He's got 11 more fantasy points. So yes, it's pretty clear to see that Antonio Brown is doing much, much better. He was targeted on 42% of his pass routes in week 5. I think that's good, James. I think that's pretty good. So yeah, AB at 87 is outstanding. Juju's still very good. Don't get me wrong, but AB is the man there. Ben at 65 is great. You're going to hear the road narrative all week. I do love Andy Dalton at $6,300. I think it's a really good play. He's been playing really, really well. People keep ignoring him. The Pittsburgh defense ranks 31st in the passing game, fantasy point-wise this year, giving up almost 22 points per game against the fantasy quarterback position, which tells you a lot about Andy Dalton at 83. I agree. Mixon, AJ Green's an amazing player. It was great last week. I love Boyd. I'm with you on everything. Uzomah, I think, to be extremely popular. That's where your RSJ play could come into play for sure. Say $300. So without echoing too much more, I agree with everything. I think it's a phenomenal smash spot, and you should go rock and roll with this one. Chargers at Cleveland. Cleveland is about a point home dog. Total is around 45 in this one. This is an interesting one because it almost feels like Phillip Rivers has kind of shook the, east to west or west to east narrative early start times. He's actually done pretty well the last few times, given it was Buffalo, but still it works. And to me, and I could be totally wrong, this has a feel of like that Cleveland-Oakland game where it turns into this kind of shootout back and forth type game because Baker's going to fling it all over the place. You got Phillip who's going to swing it everywhere. He's only $5,900. I think Melvin Gordon at $8,200 is an outstanding play this week. Cleveland's defense is good, but it can be beat. I think this is where, this goes back to what we started the podcast with, where we were talking about people looking at DVOA and looking at actual play strategy. And I could be wrong because, again, I have not seen James's numbers. I haven't looked at the next-gen stats. I haven't looked at it, but just thinking of how LA runs their offense, I think there's a lot to be said about them moving the ball in this setup. So MG3 at 82 is very, very good because they'll dump it off to him quite a bit. But I think Keenan Allen, yet again, because the one thing that the Browns do a ton is blitz. So a lot of short, quick passes leading to the running back position, leading to quick outs to Keenan Allen. I think are both really, really good plays. Other side of the ball, Baker Mayfield at 55 is a very good tournament play to be contrarian because he's going to wing it everywhere. He had a huge week last week, even though they only scored 12 points in overtime. 300-plus yards, touchdown and a pick, and could have had much more. He's getting better and better. You got David Njoku at $3,800. That is a phenomenal tight end play. The targets just keep increasing, and it's a broken record. It's about time it's finally happening. So he's a great play at that position. Landry's interesting at 66. And then in cash games with GPP upside, I think Carlos Hyde at $4,900 is stupid cheap. I think he's really, really cheap because he's getting consistent touches. He's still averaging over 21 touches per week. The volume hasn't dropped a ton, even though other guys are getting rolls. And I think there's a lot to like there with Carlos Hyde, especially in cash games at that price point. But it's a weird game. It's like I'm not targeting a ton of guys, but I think the Chargers, especially Melvin Gordon, once again, shocker to the world, is an elite play at the running back position. And Njoku is a great tight end play if you don't want to pay up to Ebron. And there's a lot of little plays where you can mix and match and tinker with. What do you like, James?
I think you nailed most of it. We need to mention that Rashard Higgins is out this week, and Travis Benjamin is probably going to be out as well. So Mike Williams is not going away on the Chargers. I really like going Phillip Rivers with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams this week. Like you just talked about, I think this can be a sneaky spot. I like Cleveland. I like Baker Mayfield. He's been good, and he's not scared to throw the ball down the field. And I think that there's good stackable options here. Like Jarvis Landry's only 6,600. Njoku's only 3,800. That's a really cheap source of targets. And he looked really good last week. So, yeah, I think this is a good stack up spot. I'm going to kind of disagree that Melvin Gordon is an elite play. I think that I'd rather have Christian McCaffrey, but I understand why you like Melvin Gordon so much. Like, I don't think he's a bad play by any means. I would just rather have Christian McCaffrey. And take the wide receiver options for LAC this week. Last week is, yeah.
No, I agree. I'd rather have McCaffrey over Gordon too. I totally would. We haven't gotten to the $10,000 running back yet, but McCaffrey and Gordon are the next two high-priced guys. I think they're both phenomenal plays. If you have to pick one, I'd go McCaffrey over Gordon as well. I totally agree with you there. I think they're both in for great games, and the floor is so good on both those players. So
yeah. And then Carlos Hyde at 4,900 is crazy, man. Like, he's averaging 20 carries a game for 4,900. That's insane. And we know the Chargers don't really have that good of a defense when it comes to stopping the run. So I don't know, at 4,900, like, it kind of depends on how much value shakes out, but I could see myself having quite a bit of Carlos Hyde.
Yeah, when I first took my notes on these games, that number stood out big time to me. I think there's a lot to like with that. All right, Chicago at Miami. Miami 3-point home dogs, totals about 44 in this one. It seems like you're either going to love the Bears' offense, you're going to play the Bears' defense, or you're not going to play this game at all. What do you say, James?
Well, I say that last week's explosion now has Mitch Trubisky as a top 5 quarterback for me in terms of value. He's 5,300. I have him projected for not very many passing yards, but a pretty decent amount of rushing yards, and he doesn't throw a lot of interceptions. So for 5,300, he looks like pretty damn good value this week. And if they're going to continue using him the way that they used him last week, which I don't know why we would expect anything different after the success that they had last week. I would think that the Chicago offense moving forward would be formidable at the very least. And they're going up against this Miami team that mostly sucks, and nobody understands what's happening with Gase and the running back usage. And then we're going to have all of their wide receivers are injured right now. Basically, Jakeem Grant is injured and questionable. Devontae Parker is injured and questionable. That team is just a train wreck. I don't really like them at all, but I like the Chicago side quite a bit. Allen Robinson is still too cheap. Taylor Gabriel is only 4,300 and went all the way off last week. So, yeah, I like the Chicago side more than anything in this game. Miami is a trash can.
Yeah, they are a trash can. Do you have any interest in Frank Gore at $3,700 getting the carries he's getting?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay. I just want to check. I just want to clarify. I just want to say it. That's all I asked.
Yeah, no. I mean, I can see why he would be interesting. Like, I get it, but I don't want anything to do with a team that doesn't have its own identity. I don't want anything to do with a team that sucks. Like, that's on. No. I mean, I can understand the play. I just don't. No, can't go there.
No, that's fair. Yeah, I think the Bears defense at $3,300 is an outstanding defense. They're in for a big day. I think I still take Carolina at 26 and save some cash, but the Bears are in a great spot there. Trubisky at 53, sneaky nice. Allen Robinson at 57, Gabriel at 43. A lot of value in this game. What's your thoughts? And then we'll move on. If they are going to go to this more passing style offense, Tariq Cohen at 4,600.
See, I don't think that he was actually a part of the game plan last week. I think that it was just one of those things where it was a hot hand situation. I still think that Jordan Howard is the guy, and I don't think that Tariq Cohen is going to get the same explosion that he had last week. But if he does, then we can count on it moving forward. I just don't think that I'm ready to commit to that.
I dig it. All right, Buffalo at Houston. Houston is an 8.5-point favorite in this matchup. Big time action on this one. Deshaun Watson at home at $6,400 definitely has my attention in that one. When it comes to the Deshaun Watson, he has 300 passing yards and 30 yards rushing in 4 straight games. That is pretty good, pretty good at the running back or at the quarterback position. That's locking in some serious points there with some upside in a game where he should be able to move the ball downfield pretty good. Buffalo's defense is really good at home, has struggled tremendously on the road. So Deshaun Watson should be in for a nice game. This is a sneaky spot to smash with. The running back position is in question. Lamar Miller said he will play this week. He limited practice on Wednesday. If he plays, then stay away from it. If he does not, Alfred Blue at $4,400 is almost like TJ Yeldon like lock, which we'll get to in a bit. But if Lamar Miller is out, Alfred Blue at 44 is an outstanding play. When you look at the receivers, DeAndre Hopkins at 77, Will Fuller at 68, Kuti at 46. Hopkins is like a Julio type. He leads in a lot of the main air yard categories. He's top 5 in a lot of them. He's a phenomenal play at $7,700. You're getting some savings over the other top guys. Kiki Kuti at 46 is great. Back-to-back phenomenal games. And he did a lot of it last week with Will Fuller on the field. That was the part that got my attention. So they have a 3-headed monster there. And when you're getting love like that, even with Will Fuller on the field, it definitely gets my attention at $4,600. The Houston D can be in play. LaShawn McCoy at 55. I won't pay it, but I do owe you $10. I will PayPal you that direction. You got lucky. And that's about all I like there. Your cheap Kelvin Benjamin's there, but I'll let you talk about the rest of it. What do you got?
Yeah, Kelvin Benjamin is having a lot of attention thrown his ways in the terms of air yards and market share. I mean, he only had 5 targets last week, but he had well over half the air yards on the team. And Josh Allen sucks, but like I said, he has some positive regression coming his way, up to about like kind of league average in completion percentage, and he runs quite a bit. So at 4,700, like I could see kind of going with a Josh Allen and Kelvin Benjamin stack if you wanted to like get up to Gurley and pay out the nose for every other position. Like that's really cheap, and there's upside there for sure. LaShawn McCoy ran the ball 24 times last week and won me $10. So that's pretty cool. But also Chris Ivory ran the ball 14 times. So there's kind of a split there. I don't think that I really want much of the Buffalo offense because it's still bad, but I could see some tournament exposure to Kelvin Benjamin for sure. On the other side of the ball, like you mentioned with DeAndre Hopkins, he's only 7,700. I can't figure that price out, man. Like that's a really, really good price. And Alfred Blue, like Lamar Miller should come back this week. I don't understand why they would play him over to Alfred Blue. Like Alfred Blue was literally the only reason why they won that game last week. Like he was the entire offense up until DeAndre Hopkins had that triple spin move at the end. It doesn't make any sense why they would go with Lamar Miller. But like you said, it's three-headed monster. It's DeAndre Hopkins, and then Kiki Kote is actually the wide receiver 2 on the offense right now. And then Will Fuller is wide receiver 3. So that's a pretty interesting little development, especially since Kiki Kote is only 4,600. You might be able to be really different by going DeAndre Hopkins and Kiki. And last but not least, I have Deshaun Watson as the highest projected quarterback on the slate. I'm projecting him for 31 fantasy points. His passing and rushing is just huge. And it's part of the reason why Blake Bortles rates so well every week too, because they both just run so much, and it's so good for their fantasy floor. It's a Cam Newton situation. I really like a Houston stack this week. It's affordable, and it's got a lot of upside, and you can bring it back with a very cheap Kelvin Benjamin as well.
Yeah, it's very, very affordable. I love the fact that you're on Watson like that. He's one of my favorite guys because everyone's going to target those other two big 50-plus total points games we talked about, and you're going to get him super low, and he's not afraid to put the points up. One last thing on Kelvin Benjamin, $3,400 for a guy that's got 20% of the target share, with an 8 out over 17 and 464 air yards, really doesn't suck. Like you said, you've been on him every week, and he just has that GPP upside for the price point that you're looking at. So I like that quite a bit.
It's going to happen one week, man. It's going to happen. Totally. He's going to go off for 2 touchdowns.
Oh, yeah, and it's going to be at least one big one. If not, it's going to be like a Robbie Anderson week like we had last week. It'll be something like that. It's going to be really big because they're looking at him down the field. He's getting the target share. You can't ask for much more at $3,400. And I think a lot of it's going to have to do with just, Allen getting more and more comfortable. And maybe he won't because that offensive line is dreadful. But at the same time, you build a rapport with the guy. Eventually it works. You realize the size of Kelvin Benjamin, that's a huge target to throw to as a safety net. So could be big. Could be big. All right, Rams at Broncos. Broncos 7-point home dogs. Total is 52.5 in this one, mainly because the Rams are in town. Todd Gurley's $10,000. James, what do you got on this one?
I'm not playing Todd Gurley at $10,000. I'll say that right now. There's no way, dude. So he's gonna score touchdowns because he touches the ball more in the red zone and within the 5-yard line than anybody else in football. In fact, I'm pretty sure that he touches it more than the next 3 players combined within the 5-yard line. So I can't hate on the guy for his opportunity, but there's no way that I'll pay $10K when he doesn't even really have that much opportunity outside of those touches in the red zone. Like, he doesn't touch the ball more often than Christian McCaffrey. He doesn't touch the ball more often than Melvin Gordon. He just gets the touchdowns, and that's fine. I just don't want to pay for that. I want to pay for the opportunity. I don't want to pay for the touchdowns. So, I know he's going to be popular, but I can't do it. I just can't do it. So yeah, there's that. And then you have all these injuries on the Rams side with Cooks being injured and Kupp being injured. And it's hard for me to think forward on this game because of that, because the only real exposure that I would want is to the Rams, because I think the Broncos are just a steaming pile of death. And then, I guess I like Cortland Sutton again. He scored a touchdown, and we nailed him last week. I called him as one of the best values on the slate. And then he goes off he had 6 targets, 2 receptions, 18 yards, and a touchdown. And that's perfectly fine for 3,400. If Case Keenum didn't suck so much, he probably would have caught 4 of those targets and blown away his price. So I think that I like that, but I have to wait for injury news on this game, and I'm not playing Todd Gurley.
Yeah, it's impossible. Not impossible. That's the wrong word. It's very difficult to build a good lineup that you can sleep with at $10,000 Todd Gurley. It's very tough, and the guy is a machine. He's awesome. He's earned the price. It's just very tough to do. So I'm with you there. I am intrigued for the fact that these injuries, yes, we need to wait and see what happens. Kupp and Woods on the concussion protocol, as you said. But I think it's interesting because Goff is still going to throw the ball at $6,000. Robert Woods at $6,900 could be interesting. But Josh Reynolds at $39 could be a really big value in that matchup because Denver is garbage. Absolute garbage. So that becomes intriguing just to see how the injury report plays out, like you said. When it comes to the Denver side of the ball, you mentioned Cortland Sutton, only $3,500. He got banged up last week. He was limited in practice today, so I'm assuming he'll play. If he plays at 35, that's an outstanding play because, in my opinion, Denver is going to be playing from behind quite a bit in this one, even without Cooks and Cooper Kupp. I think this offense is still just so dynamic, so many pieces to play with. And as long as Goff's back there leading the way, I think it'll be still very, very productive. So injuries will dictate a lot of those, like you said. The afternoon slate sucks to begin with, only 3 games, and this is the highest total. The rest is 42 and 41. So let's get to those. Baltimore at Tennessee. Tennessee 2.5-point home dogs in this matchup. Total is 42. This is brutal, but one thing I do love is some John Brown in this matchup. I loved him last week. People got pissed off he didn't do enough. I'm sorry, he got targeted 14 times. Don't know what you wanted from that. I really don't know. He was outstanding. He leads all of the wide receivers in air yards. He is over Hopkins. He's over Julio. He leads everybody. They look at him down the field. They look at him deep down the field. John Brown is a phenomenal play again at $5,500. GPP play. Like, there's still risk. But I think as long as they keep feeding him the ball, he's going to keep producing. I like him a lot. I think Buck Allen at 48 is very interesting. He can beat this Tennessee team so far this year. They have struggled against receiving running backs out of the backfield. So $4,800 there is very interesting. And then overall, if you don't like the offenses in these, I think Baltimore's D and Tennessee's D have some validity in a matchup that might just be a slow-paced game. Even in a slow-paced game, I like Brown to get the catches in a PPR format. But both these defenses are in play for me. What do you like, if anything, in this one, James?
Yeah, I mean, Corey Davis is another one from last week that just so goddamn tilting. Like, so
Him and Taywan Taylor. Tennessee was tilting.
Dude, the entire Titans team just, like, so tilting. I don't have –
In a great matchup.
I don't even have full words for it yet. But I'm going to go back to Corey Davis, I'm pretty sure. I might go back to the Titans overall. Like, we know that Mariota has it in him to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback. Like, we know that he does. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a situation like Russell Wilson. Like, we know that it's there. We just got to, like, see it. And we saw it with Russell Wilson last week. And we know that it can be there for Mariota. You mentioned John Brown. A lot of other people have mentioned John Brown. I think he's going to be really chalky this week, but he is a very, very good play. Especially in GPPs. But it should be said that he got 14 targets last week, but Michael Crabtree got 12. So we know that Baltimore is going to throw the ball a lot, period. They like to throw the ball. They would prefer to throw the ball, I think, and Joe Flacco has always been a volume guy. We talked about that plenty on the pod last year. But I think that a Baltimore stack here could be interesting because if they're going to throw the ball a lot, we know that it can go – like, the upside is there for multiple players. So I think the upside is there for both John Brown and Michael Crabtree. John Brown for the deep stuff and Michael Crabtree for the short stuff. I think I like that a lot. And they're both cheap. Man, this is the game. This is the game that's going to piss me off this week. I already know this is going to be the game that pisses me off because I'm not going to get enough of these players that I like from it, and it's going to go off.
Yeah, right when you started talking, I was going to ask, do you think this could be that sneaky game? Just because we've seen both these teams put up a ton of points. Baltimore's defense is good. It's been pretty good all year, but we know in the past it struggles a little more on the road than at home. You're right. This has a weird appeal to it, a very weird appeal to it. Yeah, Corey Davis still getting 30% of the target share. So, yeah, this is one. It's hard for me to want to fit stuff in this game, but, yeah, it can be very tilting. Let's go Jacksonville at Dallas. Dallas 3-point home dogs in this one. Total's only 41. This is a dreadful-looking football game. What do you like in this one?
Well, first off, the Cowboys are playing some caveman football this year, and they are just don't play wide receivers for Dallas, period. You can play Ezekiel Elliott, and that's it. And Ezekiel Elliott at his price point is way too cheap at only $7K. He is literally everything for this team. And he's priced down because of the Jacksonville defense, but he's everything for this team. And with that much opportunity at $7K, especially because he will not be owned, like his ownership is going to be like negative numbers. He's going to be 1-digit percent owned. He's a phenomenal GPP play this week at $7K. We know that he has the opportunity. We know that he has the volume. But this game just, man, I don't know. It looks like it's going to be really, really bad. I have Blake Bortles projected really, really well. The Jacksonville wide receivers are still too cheap. Westbrook at $5K, too cheap. Moncrief 4,400, too cheap. DJ Chark got some got some run last week at 3,500. Keelan Cole's 4,800. Like, you can play a Jacksonville stack here and bring it back with Ezekiel Elliott and have like 1% ownership average across your lineup.
You left out the name of TJ Yeldon at $6,400. I think he's is he a lock again this week, James?
I haven't decided yet, man. Like he got plenty of run, and I don't have a problem with him. But they did just sign Jamal Williams, and he's going to come in and take some of it, like we know that he will. So I don't know if I think that TJ Yeldon is like a total lock. They really don't like. So something that I saw on Twitter is that when Jacksonville knows that they're not going to have Fournette, they usually try to split the running back workup between Yeldon and the backup when they know they don't have him. Like when it is an impromptu thing, like when Fournette starts and then he's injured, Yeldon comes in and gets the bulk of the work because they don't have a plan for it. But I think they have a plan for it this week. I don't think that Yeldon is going to touch the ball 20-plus times this week.
Well, I like Yeldon at 64. I'll be going back to that train. Dallas is horrific against the lead running back. 4 or 5 games over 95 yards. He's given 120 to Alfred Blue. So I'll take the gamble there, as I think this will be a game that Jacksonville is in control from start to finish. I do like Zeke at 7K. I love Zeke at 7K. I agree with everything you said about Zeke. Other than that, there's not a ton I like about this game. I'll probably be passing on this game, except for the running backs in this matchup. I'll even play different defenses that I think Jacksonville can be quite chalky. Now to prime time, where we have the best game of the week on Sunday Night Football, at least on paper. Kansas City at New England should be amazing. New England is a 3-point home favorite in this one. The total is 59. And that still might be too low. This on paper has shootout written all over it. In reality, I could say just play everyone because that's kind of like what I look at. You got the Mahomes side of things. Mahomes with Tyreek Hill, Kelsey's outstanding, and the rest of the pieces there. And then on New England side, Brady at home. Sony Michel's knee was a little banged up at practice today. Keep an eye on that. But James White is up to $6,900, and rightfully so, as the guy is a monster. Edelman's back. I think Cordell Patterson is a nice cheap option in your showdowns. And then Gronk's only 6,100, but he kind of looks broken. But maybe he has a Gronk-type week in a phenomenal matchup. This is a great game. I know I'm not really helping by narrowing it down at all because there's a million ways to go in this one, like a ton of ways to go. So I'm curious to hear what you have to say, James.
I mean, I just kind of echo your sentiment here. Like, I am excited to play this on the showdown slate, and I'm excited to spread things out. I think that Josh Gordon is going to be huge moving forward. That's kind of my hot take. I know that he didn't have very many targets, but that touchdown is huge. Just to have him get in the end zone and to raise that confidence and to raise Tom Brady's confidence in him and bailing him out for that. Like, I just think that was so big for Josh Gordon and what he's going to do for this team. So I really like Josh Gordon, but you can go wherever you want in this game. Probably don't play like Chris Hogan and probably don't play, I don't know, the backup tight end for Kansas City, but I legit think you can go anywhere in this game. So that's my thoughts on it. I'm excited to play it on the showdown slate, and I'm excited to watch it, especially because this should be a really, really good game.
It should be a great game to watch, like really good game. So I'm glad for once. Well, we've had some pretty good primetime of late. I'm not going to say for once, but this literally is what primetime is supposed to be. This is Sunday Night Football. So I'm pretty pumped on that. Let's go to Monday night, where the Niners had 6 primetime games this year because they thought they'd have Jimmy Garoppolo. Now this game really is not that appealing. Niners at the Packers. Packers 9.5-point home favorites. Total is almost 47. James, what do you got here?
I'm surprised they're only 9.5-point home favorites. Like usually,
I bet you it goes up by game time.
Yeah, because Green Bay gets 4 points on the spread just for being at home. They have the largest home field advantage in the league. So I'm surprised they're only 9.5-point home favorites. I think they should be like 11, maybe 12-point home favorites. But it is what it is. Yeah, the Packers will stomp the 49ers into the ground. I think that there is reason to play somebody like Juice Kick or however the fuck you pronounce his name. There's reason to play a couple guys in this game on the San Francisco side, but I wouldn't get too cute about it. On Showdown, you definitely play both quarterbacks, obviously. CJ Beathard is throwing the ball a lot, and we mentioned that last year, that they do throw the ball with him a lot, and he does do a lot of checkdowns. So for fantasy, there's good reason to play him. But this game should suck to watch. It should be easy for the Packers to win. I don't expect Aaron Rodgers to have to do too much. I expect it to kind of be like last year, the first game against Detroit, when he threw 4 first-half touchdowns and then didn't have to do anything for the rest of the game. I expect something like that. I expect him to do maybe like 250 yards and 4 touchdowns or something like that. It should be kind of lame to watch, but there's plenty of fantasy goodness, especially if we're going to have Randall Cobb is probably going to miss again. Geronimo Allison should be back. But, I mean, all the pieces are in play. I don't think that I need to tell people to play Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers in this game.
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Everyone's going to know about Montez, or MVS as people call him. I think the only thing I'll mention on the Niners side of things is Kittle's still getting a ton of work. Don't just ignore that. And then Trent Taylor at 4K got a ton of work last week with Goodwin hurt and Pettis out. So watch that. He's only 4K on the week-long deal. Could be a good showdown play as a cheap option in the Niners passing game at $4,000. I wouldn't completely ignore that one.
Yeah.
All right, that wraps up our 15-game breakdown. Let's do some position by position. James, give me some of your top plays at the quarterback position.
Yeah, so quarterback, focus on value. Blake Bortles is the top value for me. Again, he's just been running so much that it's really easy for me to just put him at the top. Then, like I mentioned, Deshaun Watson is way up there. I have him as the top overall projected quarterback. Moving down the list a little bit, I like Cam Newton. I like Joe Flacco quite a bit. He's 5,200 and just has too much volume there. And then you can move down, and I think Andrew Luck is a really good GPP play.
All right. I like that. I like Dalton at 63. I think, what's his name? We just talked about him. Deshaun Watson, I think, is a phenomenal play in that matchup. And then I think Baker Mayfield at 55 could be interesting if I want to go a little off the wall. Let's go to the running back position. What are you looking at there?
Yeah, running back, it's mostly going to be – I mean, Christian McCaffrey is my top overall projected, just barely ahead of Melvin Gordon. They definitely deserve their high price tags. And then Ezekiel Elliott is number 3. So those top 3, I think I'm going to have probably the most exposure to Ezekiel Elliott just because of his price point. And then as you move down, David Johnson is a good play. I have TJ Yeldon as a good play right now, even though I think that I will drop that down a bit. And then Marshawn Lynch is another good play if you think that Oakland is going to be leading that game. And if Sean McCoy is going to get 27 opportunities, like, he deserves consideration at his price. We know what he can do with volume. So if that's a sign of things moving forward, I kind of want some of that. And then Carlos Hyde at 4,900, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I like those for sure. Outside of the high price guys, DJ at 59, Hyde at 49. I think Buck Allen could be interesting at 49, someone to keep an eye, or 48, someone to keep an eye on there. And then I do like some Chris Carson at $4,400. I think that's a nice value as well. Let's go to the wide receiver position. What are you targeting there?
Yeah, wide receiver, it's hard to get away from Julio Jones at 7,900, but if you're going to do it, it's going to be in the form of DeAndre Hopkins at 7,700. I think he's just like an elite pivot. I mean, you can think that Julio Jones is probably going to have like 30, 40% ownership this week, especially with all the conversation about him. So I think DeAndre Hopkins is a really good GPP pivot. Working down a little bit, Corey Davis is still a really, really good play. I'm not willing to drop him down quite yet. I need to see it fail again before I guess I learn my lesson. Allen Robinson's a good play. I really like Keenan Allen. I think that 7,500, he's another good pivot. And then Quincy Enunwa at 5,600, if he's healthy, is a good play. And then I like Kelvin Benjamin, like I talked about, and I like Kiki Kote a lot. I like the Houston wide receivers quite a bit this week.
Yeah, I echo the Julio and Hopkins thing. That's just too cheap for those guys to be down there. I think Tyler Boyd at 6K is another guy to keep in mind. I think after a down week could be big. You obviously have Djax at 59, but Tyler Lockett at 51 is someone to keep an eye on. Jordy Nelson in that same game at 49, Mohamed Sanu at 48, and Kuti at 46 are a couple I really like. Also Godwin at 44, another value in that big-time matchup you can look at for sure. Tight end position, what are you looking at there?
I got to go back to Ricky Seals-Jones, man. Like, he's just such a good value at $2,700. I can't ignore the workload that he's been getting, and I just got to hope that some of that Rosen regression happens and he gets back a little bit towards the mean. Jeff Swaim, I can go back to him again. He's been really big for Dak. He only had 3 targets, but those 3 targets got him 48 yards last week. So if he gets a little bit more work, I think that he at 2,900, he's another really good play. David Njoku is going to be really popular this week, but he's a good play. I don't have any problem with him at all. And And then moving down a little bit, I am fine with Eric Ebron. I just don't think he's a very good value. Like, if you have the money, you can go ahead and pay for him. But I always prefer to choose value at my tight end, so I won't be going there. And then Austin Hooper is fine at 3,500.
All right, yeah, and Njoku at 38 I like quite a bit. Chalky or no chalk there. RSJ I can get behind. Uzuma at 3K. And then if Howard's out, Cameron Braid at 37. Very, very intriguing. Defenses, James. What are we looking at?
And you know what's funny is my number one defense is actually the Bills defense at 2,200. As much as I like Houston, I mean, they're cheap, and Houston gives up a lot of sacks. And that's kind of the thing. Like, the way that I project my defense is based off sack rates and interception rates and, like, what the Vegas total is against them. So at my initial thought, I had Houston projected at like 26 points. This was when Deshaun Watson was still questionable, so I didn't have a Vegas total on yet. So I just kind of guessed at like 26. And they popped just fine at $2,200. And then the Texans defense is actually next at 3,500 against Buffalo because Buffalo sucks. But then I have the Chargers. They're a good defense. The Raiders aren't bad at 2,100. This is another week where you're going to be able to pay down and be fine on it. And then I like the Colts defense at 2,500 against the Jets.
Yeah, I like Houston at 35, the Bears at 33 against the Dolphins. I think Carolina at 26. We talked about that one already. And then I don't know why. I think it could be interesting if it is a low-scoring game. I think Dallas at 23 could be very interesting. I really do. And that matchup goes super low owned. I liked the Detroit last week at 22. It paid off. It would have been real nice if Aaron Rodgers didn't go Aaron Rodgers in the second half. But 23 for Dallas could be interesting in that one.
Yeah, I have Dallas rated really well. I agree.
Yeah. All right, let's talk heck, Dallas and a Zeke stack would be so low owned. It'd be crazy. All right, stacks, what are you looking at?
Man, it's so hard for me right now because I haven't projected forward, but I think that the main stacks I'm going to be looking at are Houston in order to get away from that Atlanta-Tampa Bay. I really don't want to play Atlanta-Tampa Bay in GPPs. I think they're good in cash. I think that you need exposure there in cash. But in GPPs, I'd rather have my Houston stacks. I'd rather have my Baltimore stacks. I'd rather have like Cleveland and the Chargers. I think those are my top four. And then you can get weird and go with Oakland or Seattle or something like that. But I think in GPPs, it's smart to avoid that Tampa Bay Atlanta game.
Yeah, I wrote down Tampa Bay Atlanta on this list here just because I echo everything you say, though. Houston I like a lot. Pittsburgh, Cincy is interesting. San Diego, Cleveland, and Seattle, Oakland. So those are kind of the four games I'll be targeting. Obviously, Houston, I'm not looking too much at the Buffalo side of things unless you want Kelvin Benjamin or something. But I think there's validity in Pittsburgh, Cincy, both sides there, San Diego, Cleveland, Seattle, Oakland. A lot to like there to pivot off of Atlanta, like you mentioned. And the fact that, I really, really want to make some lineups, a few lineups, with Julio and Hopkins both in them because they're so damn cheap and just so stupid. Like, it really is stupid. All right, let's get into some listener questions. You guys came out in full force this week, and we love it. Keep it coming. Give us twice as much next week. I'm good with it. We got Dustin Maben at DSMaben0308 on Twitter. Is Goff still viable if Kupp and Cooks are out?
Yeah, I think that he's still viable. I mean, like I talked about at the beginning of the podcast, it's all about how the offense runs and how the offensive coordinator develops things. And I think that Jared Goff is a good enough quarterback that even if he doesn't have Cooper Kupp, one of those back-end guys can step in and be a really, really good weapon and make a stack good.
Yep, so I think Josh Reynolds at 39 will be just fine there. If those guys are out, I'm pretty sure I know your answer here. Does it impact your desire to play Gurley?
I mean, I don't want to play Gurley regardless, but I guess if those guys were out, it would raise his target share a little bit since Kupp would not feel comfortable throwing down, I guess. I don't know. No, not really. I'm not going to play him.
All right, our boy Yance at Yancey Eaton. How many Bucks-Falcons game stacks are you boys jamming in this week? Going to be impossible to avoid that game. We kind of just hit on that. GPPs, it might be worth avoiding, but yes, it's very, very difficult. I would say I'm not going to be 100% avoidance, but it's not going to be my favorite stack. What about you?
Yeah, I'm not going to completely avoid it because that would be stupid. Like, I definitely still want some Jameis Winston. I definitely still want some Atlanta, but I'm going to try not to focus that into the majority of my core. Like, I don't want that to be part of my core.
All right, Walter McMichael at Real Fake. Walter, does defense matter? Yes, go check out the answer is go check out the start of the podcast. Next up, we have, sorry, just trying to scroll through all this, as we have a handful, but I didn't write them all down because I'm a genius. But I know we had, are you worried about Chalky, Brait, and Ebron this week?
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about Chalky Ebron because he's let down the community so many times before, and I just think that last week is going to inflate his ownership into a stratosphere that I'm not willing to pay for a tight end. So I'm worried about it, and I'm not really interested in trying to go there.
And that was from at DFS Golf Gods, Jesse. All right, we have another one here. This one's pretty good from Jason Roth at Jason Roth 07. He would like a list of what teams don't suck according to James.
Oh, teams that don't suck. Okay, yeah. Let's do it.
You know what? Before you answer, I appreciate Jason because you can tell that's a valued listener because he knows your terminology about these teams just suck. So continue.
All right, yeah. So teams that don't suck. Let's see. The Rams don't suck. The Falcons don't suck, no matter what their record says. The Falcons definitely don't suck. Baltimore doesn't suck. I think they'll be way better throughout the year. Let's see. The Chargers don't suck. I like the Chargers. The Patriots obviously don't suck. Kansas City doesn't suck. And the Panthers obviously don't suck because they're my favorite team.
All right. Robbie Steinerman at Yankees fan 0223 has a handful of questions here. Real quick, will Julio Jones score a touchdown ever again?
Well, yeah, he's going to score like 3 touchdowns this year.
Yeah. Is this the Lynch revenge game against Seattle?
So no, because Seattle didn't really fuck him over, right? Like he left and retired so that he could go like hang out in London for a little while and shoot Starburst commercials and then go play for the Raiders in his hometown. So I don't think it's a revenge game. I don't think he has any sentiment towards them.
Then we kind of already answered it, and we can just do a real quick hit again. But what's your favorite stack besides Tampa, Atlanta?
Yeah, it's got to be that Houston game. I think that's a really, really nice spot to pivot away from. And then I do really like the Chargers-Browns game. All right.
So Atlanta's passing game is good, but teams are exploiting the Falcons' defense via pass-catching running backs. If you had to pick one, who do you have, Ronald Jones, Peyton Barber, or Jacquizz?
I mean, if I have to pick one, I guess it's Ronald Jones, but I'm not going to pick any because I have no idea what they're going to do. Like, they don't like any of these running backs, so why would I expect them to get any more work?
Exactly. And that's from Coach Sully 44 at Shane M. Sullivan. Again, thanks for all your questions, guys. Really awesome having you guys get incorporated for this. As we keep saying, we do this for you guys. So let us know wherever we can help, and we'll make it happen. With that being said, James, good week in the books here. Week 6 is broken down. Lots to like, lots to not like. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I needed to add one team to my list of teams that don't suck, and that is the Minnesota Vikings. They do not suck. Yeah, but that's all I got, man. Like that, and let's play some Showdown. Like Showdown's a lot of fun. If you're not playing it, get involved and play kickers, and you'll just win money.
Yeah, play Showdown. Follow James for Showdown as his optimizer is kicking ass, and he tweets out a lot of the info for you right beforehand. So go check it out. Good stuff there. And again, throughout the week, if you have any questions, hit up the podcast handle at 2pointconv. We have an email you can email there. Our DMs are open. You can directly message James. You can message myself. There's a lot of ways to get a hold of us. Don't be afraid to ask. But with that being said, good luck this week. Fun 15-game, full-game slate. We've got your 12-game Sunday action. This was the 2 Point Conversion NFL DFS podcast, Week 6 preview. Catch you guys later.